In this video, I'm going to show you how to tail logs from multiple Kubernetes pods on the command line. This is often the quickest method to debug your applications or monitor their performance. I used to face plenty of problems while tailing logs myself for troubleshooting purposes and would end up Googling the same stuff over and over, which gets a bit frustrating. So I decided to fix it once and for all and make a video on the most important tricks you need to know for efficiently working with pod logs. So we're going to cover how to get logs from all the pods running in a deployment and in a daemon set. Then how to get logs of a crashed or a restarted pod. Then also how to get logs from pods running inside a namespace. So all the pods running in a namespace, regardless of whether they belong to a deployment or a daemon set or they're just standalone pods, just stream the logs of all the pods. Finally, I'm also going to show you how to search and filter through all these logs on the command line, so you only get to see the information that you're actually interested in. Let's get started. I use a combination of kubectl and stern for all my logging needs on the command line. But of course, there are plenty of other tools out there and you can choose whichever you like. Let's start with the basic stuff and then slowly we will make our lives more complicated. The simplest thing you can do is to just tail logs from a single pod in Kubernetes. Okay, let's pick one at random. This will dump the logs of the pod we specify. If there's only one container running inside this pod, then this will just output the logs of that container. But if there are multiple running inside that pod, then this command by default produces the logs of the first container defined in the pod. Most likely that first container is the application container itself. So that's why you would normally see the app container logs. But it could also be something else. You can also use the follow option to stream the logs rather than just dumping the existing logs. I also like to combine it with the tail option. So when I say tail 5, what that means is give me the most recent 5 logs that you've produced and then continue streaming. Oftentimes, my pod has been running for quite a while and it has already produced possibly hundreds or even thousands of logs. And I don't want to dump that entire thing on my terminal. So rather than that, I just say tail 5 and only get the last 5 logs produced and then continue streaming. Cool. Now I can also use stern for the same. Notice that by default, stern streams logs automatically. You don't need to give it the follow option. And it shows me logs from all the containers in the pod. One reason I find stern very powerful is because in addition to specifying Kubernetes resources, it also lets me specify regular expressions, which I'm going to show you later why it's super powerful. Okay, now let's tail logs from all the pods in a deployment. Prod app deployment. Now this is where many people make a big mistake. People think that by writing something like this, kubectl logs deployment, you get the logs of all the pods in a deployment, but that's not true. Actually, this way kubectl will only give you logs of one pod from this deployment. So if I've got 7 pods running, it'll pick one and then it'll just show you the logs of that. So this is just one pod and not actually all the pods in the deployment. So instead of specifying the deployment here, you can specify the label of the app. You can get a label that is applied to all the pods in a deployment and then specify that label. And through that, you can get the logs of all the pods in a deployment. So let's see how. Okay, so for our pod, there is one label called app equals prod app. So let's use that. By the way, I could also check the labels like this. Yeah, this gives me app equals prod app as well. Okay, then kubectl logs -l for label app equals prod app. Okay, so our command is correct, but this is yet another problem you might face sometimes. Okay, so get this. Every container inside every pod that's running in a deployment right? It's producing its own log stream, which means if you want to fetch the logs of across all the pods, you're basically fetching all these log streams, right? So you have to fetch these streams concurrently, and that's what kube control is trying to do here. But understand this, that making so many concurrent requests to the Kubernetes API server, it can create a lot of load on the API server. So you have to be aware of this and use it very responsibly. And now it works. These are logs of all the pods. With Stern, this same thing becomes slightly easier. If you specify the deployment, it will in fact produce logs of all the pods in the deployment. Cool. So this is how you can get logs from all the pods in a deployment. One thing I also like about Stern is that its output will keep adjusting to any changes in my deployment. So for example, if 2 more pods are added in my deployment, then it will also start streaming the logs for those pods. Okay, how about getting logs from all the pods in a daemon set? Okay, no daemon set in my current namespace, but I do have daemon sets in kube system. Okay, this is my daemon I deployed. Yeah. Okay, then yeah, those are the logs from all the pods. Remember that daemon set will deploy 1 pod per node. I have 4 nodes of 4 pods. So I also commonly use the node filter when streaming logs from a daemon so that I can get logs from the pod of a specific node. Okay, I need node for that. Okay, how about 03? Yeah, so I get the logs from that particular node. Okay, then how about we fetch the logs of all the pods running inside my namespace? So currently my namespace production. So we'll work with this namespace. But of course, if you want to try it with a different namespace, just specify -n and then specify a namespace. So in the production namespace, I can now run Stern like dot. This is a rather simple command. So the dot here is a regular expression actually. And what this means is simply match everything. So with this command, Stern is going to give me the logs of all the pods inside my current namespace. And just the pods, not any other resources of the Kubernetes cluster. Yep, awesome. Now we have covered the basic building blocks. Now I'm going to teach you some more advanced options that you can use during logging. And then the idea is that you use these advanced options and you use the basic building blocks we saw above. You combine them to actually tail logs for all the complex scenarios. So first option. Now we know that a pod could be running multiple containers, right? So how do we get the logs from a pod from all the containers at once? Stern does this by default. By default, it will give me the logs of both the containers running in my pod. In fact, if I had more containers, it would give me the logs of all these containers. Currently, I have auth agent and app running inside my pod. With kube control, I will specify all containers. When I specify this, I get logs across all the containers. The UI, I find it a bit inconvenient compared to Stern, but you can see that the JSON logs are produced by my app and the line logs are produced by my authentication agent from my sidecar container. So you can see that I'm getting both these logs on my terminal right now. The opposite of this is to stream logs only from a specific container. And you can do it with both Stern and kubectl by simply specifying the -c option, which is to specify a container, right? So what containers do I have? I have one container app, right? And the other one auth agent. Okay. So let's say I would like the logs of auth agent. So kubectl logs -c auth agent. Now this will give me logs of just the auth agent container from my pod. Same thing with Stern. And I can even get auth agent containers logs across my entire deployment. So this is what I just did. I just combined the complex option with some basic building blocks that I taught you earlier. And we got this complex scenario covered. So now let's say you want just the application logs from all the pods in a deployment, right? Let's see how to do this. Label app equals prod, follow, container is app, and max log quests 7. Okay, so I think at this point you can understand this complete command. I use the label to get all pods from the deployment, -f so I can stream the logs. I specify the container application and also concurrency. And here it is, app logs from all the pods in my deployment. With Stern, that's all. And there you go. Okay, now let's look at another important scenario. Let's say your application encountered an error or something misbehaved and your pod crashed, right? In such a case, the kubelet will probably restart the pod or the container inside it. You can access the logs of the previous container, and maybe the last few logs of that container will give you some hint as to why the app crashed. You can do this using the previous option. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to first intentionally crash one of my pods in the background. Let's pick this one. I'm going to crash this one in the background. Okay, I just went somewhere and did something and it crashed. Now let's check its logs of the previous container. -p. And there. I checked the logs of the previous container and the last log said failed to write to local disk, shutting down. So maybe this application is trying to write some data to the disk continuously, and maybe let's say the disk was full or suddenly its permissions went away and it was unable to write data to disk. And this application is programmed to fail if it's unable to write data to disk. So instead of proceeding, the application decided to shut down. And that's where the container crashed. So this way, the -p option, which is to show the logs of the previous container, it's super helpful in debugging how an application crashed. It could potentially give you lots of hints because the last logs of the previous container often have some very helpful information. Now, when you're tailing so many logs like this, things can quickly get out of hands. The volume of logs generated can quickly increase as you add more logs in your code, the traffic on your application increases, or as you scale up to add more pods. So after a certain point, all this log dump really starts to add a lot of noise, and you need to start filtering and searching so that you can only stream the logs that actually make sense, that you're actually interested in, and they'll give you real information. So biggest example, let's say I only want to stream error logs from my application. First thing you need to know here is that there is no natively supported method for this. Kubectl or Stern can't filter out based on log level for you, but you can use some simple tricks to achieve the same thing. grep is very useful here. Let's try to get the error logs from the auth agent container of a single pod. Let's pick this pod. Okay. grep error. Oops. Yeah. Now I can get all the error logs with a simple bash trick. Okay, and how about error logs from all the pods in my deployment? Also very easy. Yes. Very good. This is not 100% accurate though, but in most cases, this will let you stream only error logs. grep is case sensitive by default, so unless your logs contain the text error in all caps, this will only match the error log level and give you the error logs. In most cases, it's good enough. If your pod produces structured logs, however, then there are more foolproof methods. For example, my app container produces JSON logs, so I can actually use JQ to filter out on error logs. So let's see how. Okay. First, I know this is the format that I get my logs in, right? My application produces JSON log, but I'm also getting this metadata, which is useful. But right now, all I want is just JSON. Okay, so let's fix that first. Yeah, first, all I get is just JSON objects. Okay, next thing, let's try to format it better with JQ. Yeah, okay. Now I can get all the JSON objects logs. Next, let's try to filter out on the level. And perfect. Now JQ can give me all the error logs. So this is the complete command. First, I just ask Stern to give me all the logs from my app container. Then I use a template option to just output the JSON objects. Then I use JQ to format them better. And I also specify a condition in JQ that the level object, the level field should have error and just display me those log objects. So, and this is what we have. Now I can see exactly the errors that are being produced in my application pods, and I can directly address these. Similarly, let's say that I'm looking for logs only for a specific API call. So I know that in my logs, I get something like this. These are the logs, right? So let's say I would like to look for API v2 users, get requests. Okay. grep get. So I would like to look for all the logs for all the API calls, get API v2 users. A simple grep could give me that. And to make it slightly more complicated, let's say I only want to see the error logs for this API, right? I could combine this grep trick with the JQ trick that we used above to get only the error logs for this particular API. Message JQ first. I get this filtration. Good. Next, what I want is select dot level error. Okay, this gives me the error logs. Perfect. And now finally I can do a grep on get /API v2 users. If I search for things that don't exist, then I don't get them. Nothing. So these are tricks I always use for better log tailing with my Kubernetes pods. These are quick commands that will help you a lot during troubleshooting and performance monitoring. But of course, tailing logs on your local machine is not a replacement for an actual logging pipeline. Once your applications start producing a very high volume of logs, you're going to need some serious searching and filtering capabilities, which the command line cannot provide, as I'm sure you can already see. So you should definitely have a logging pipeline in place. For example, the ELK stack or the Grafana Loki stack. These log visualizers make it a lot easier for you to work with logs at scale. They can also take care of special cases like multi-line logging. For example, if there's a big stack trace, it's very hard to capture that as a single log on the command line, but it's very easy for these tools to capture such a thing. So these are the most important tricks you need to know to efficiently tail logs from your Kubernetes pods. And if you have more tricks that you use, do share with me in the comments below. Because like you, I too am a lifelong learner. Also, I used kubectl and Stern for my log tailing needs, but there are plenty of other great tools available online for free. Some examples are K9s, kubetail, and Kale. All the links are in the description below. If there are specific topics in Kubernetes that you would like me to cover, let me know. My comment box is always open for you. See you next time.